Hello and welcome to the section on brushes. In this lesson, we're going to cover the basics of our brushes. A lot of the information we are going to cover in this lesson, we've already done in previous sections of this course. So if you're already comfortable with brushes, you're familiar with all the different keyboard shortcuts to be as proficient as possible with brushes, then you can either use this particular lesson as an overview or you can skip it. If you're starting in this lesson as part of the very first lesson or one of the first lessons in this course, then I'm going to assume that you know nothing about brushes because we're going to do a complete overview on brushes in this lesson. So if you're ready to get started, the first thing we need to do is create a new document. So once you open up Photoshop, you should have an option right here that says Create New. Once you click on that, you can go ahead and create a new document. Size doesn't matter. Just go ahead and make any size document you want. We're going to go ahead and click OK to get started. Next, we're going to go ahead and create some colored shapes. We'll do 4 in total. Go ahead and grab your shape tool, which is located right here. Make sure it's rectangle. You can do ellipse if you want. It's up to you. And now that I already have my first shape created, I'm going to go ahead and double click on this little icon right here to open up our color picker. And I'm just going to pick a random color. Now with our keyboard shortcut, let's duplicate this shape 3 times. And that keyboard shortcut is Command or Control and the letter J. That's going to duplicate the layer. We're going to do it again. Command or Control and the letter J, and then one more time. Grab your Move tool with the letter V. Click and drag out one of those layers. Make sure you have Auto Select and Layer selected in order to grab one of the layers. And there should be one more in there. And that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and double click on these icons again and just create some more random colors. All right, I'm going to readjust these. I'm going to make my canvas a little bit wider. Let's grab all our layers. With our Move tool, we're going to click on this icon, which is Align Top Edges. Then we're going to click on this icon here, which is to distribute horizontal centers. We need to make sure that these layers are further apart from each other, and we'll go ahead and do that again. Now, if this is going way too fast for you, and if you've not done any of the other lessons, I apologize for going too fast, but we have covered all these tools in sections previous to this section. And the reason why I'm doing this versus giving you the document is because I want to help you practice what you've learned throughout this course. If you're doing this lesson as the very first lesson in this course, then you might be a little confused. So I would recommend going back to the beginning of the course and starting from there. And then you'll have a better feel for how we made all these shapes and used all our Move tools in order to create this document. All right, that being said, we are now ready to start working with our brushes. So the first thing we need to do in order to use our brush is to select the brush tool, which is located right here. And we can also access the brush tool with the letter B. Inside, we have additional brush tools. We have a pencil tool, color replacement tool, and a mixer brush tool. So in this lesson, we're just going to go over the basics of our brush tool. So go ahead and grab that. And we'll go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead and create a new layer as well so we can use that to paint on. Now the other thing I want to mention is there are additional brush tools. Right here we have additional tools to use with our brushes. We have a history brush tool, an art history brush tool, and we're going to go over those in an upcoming lesson. And then as you know, if you've already gone through some of the other sections in this course, we do have other tools like our spot healing brush tool, our stamp tool, and some other tools. We do use a brush in conjunction with those particular tools. So again, I'm just going to go over the basics of the brushes, keyboard shortcuts, and some of the other options that we have with our brushes up here as well. Now, unlike some of the other tools that we've used, when you have the paintbrush itself selected and you have a color within the foreground, whether it's grayscale or an actual color, you can just click and paint with that particular color with your paintbrush, and then the edges of that stroke can be controlled by adjusting the hardness or the softness of those edges. But before we go over that, I just want to go over some other basics about color selection for your brushes. So as you know, you can click on your foreground or your background, and then you can choose some colors within this color picker panel. And you can also input numbers based on specific colors depending on the project that you're working on and the color specifications for that project. Your client could give you some numbers that correlate with these 4 different options here, which are HSB, RGB, LAB, and CMYK. We also have another option down here, and this is for inputting a hexadecimal number, and it's a 6-digit number that will correspond to that color once inputted. So if I change this number, the color changes. So the hexadecimal and the CMYK are the most popular type of numbers that you may receive from your clients. You can also select colors from your document, because once you hover your mouse outside of this panel, it turns into an eyedropper tool, and then you can click on the colors within your document to set those colors as the foreground color. But we actually don't have to go inside that color picker panel because we can do it directly from our document. All we have to do is switch our brush tool from a brush to an eyedropper tool with the letter I, and then we can make those color selections this way. Or instead of switching to the eyedropper tool, you can hold down your Alt or Option key when you have the brush tool activated, and it's automatically going to change to the eyedropper tool, and then you can let go of the Alt or Option key and it will go back to your brush. So those are just some quick tips on using different tools to select your colors. Now, another keyboard shortcut that I like to use, and I use it a lot, is our bracket keys. The right bracket key will make your brush larger, and the left bracket key will make the brush smaller. We can also change the hardness or softness of our brushes with another keyboard shortcut, which is simply to hold down our Shift key. So with Shift and your left bracket key, it's going to make the brush softer, and Shift and the right bracket key is going to make that brush harder. And we can better see that if we go to our options panel up here. We can see that the hardness right now is at 100%. And if I hold down my Shift and use my left bracket key, it's going to make it softer. So if we go back, we can now see it set to 0%. So it's going to move it in increments of 25%. So 4 clicks will get you to 0%. 4 more clicks will get you to 100%. We're going to go over some of these other options in just a minute. But first, I just want to show you another cool quick tip. When painting, you may want to create a straight line, but as you can see, this is not a very straight line. So what I can do instead is I can hold down my Shift key as I'm painting, and that will create a straight line. So the first thing I need to do is click and hold my mouse button, then hold down my Shift key, and I can paint a straight line. Doesn't look very straight because we do have a soft edged brush. So let's go ahead and move that to a hard edged brush, and we'll be able to better see that. So I'm going to hold down my Shift key, and now I have a straight line. Without the Shift key, not so straight. Now the other tip I have for you is if you hold down your Shift key before you click, then it's going to continue with the area that you stopped previously. So I'm going to hold down my Shift key and then click, and we can see that I now have a straight line that starts from where I stopped the previous brush stroke. Now, as I showed you before, we can come up here and change the hardness of our brush, but we can also increase the size of the brush here. Or instead of coming up here, we can right click on our document and we're going to get that same panel. So it's just a little quicker just to right click and access the size and the hardness. If we don't want to use keyboard shortcuts, we can do it that way. Okay, let's just go ahead and go over these options up here for our brushes next. So this first option right here, if we click on this drop down arrow here, we're going to see some names of brushes. These are presets created by Adobe for you to use as part of your brushes. So they're basically different brush tips and have other types of settings applied to them to create a certain type of effect. So right here we can see that the brush has changed from a round circle to a bunch of little dots, and it just gives us a different type of effect when we brush on with that particular brush tip. So you can access those brush tips here, and you can even create your own. Let's go ahead and access our hard round brush again here. And if we go back to this menu, we can see there's some options here. If we click on this little icon right here, that's going to create a new brush preset. And then you get a little message from Adobe here saying that if you wish to make a preset, you can now contain all the functionality of tool presets, but with additional benefits such as stroke previews and the ability to organize into folders. So if you want to do that, click yes, and then you're going to give your new brush a name. You're going to select capture brush size and preset if you want that exact brush size. You can also include color as part of it, and then if you have any other tool settings, you can include that as well. Once you make that new preset, it's going to be available within this menu here or via this option here, and we can see our hard round brush right here. We also have a list of more brush presets in this panel as well. So Adobe gives you two options, either select them from here or select your brush presets from here. And again, these are just different brush tips that you can apply to your brush that will give you a different type of effect based on that brush tip. Right next to that, we have another icon that will give us more brush options. So inside of here, we have a ton of different types of brush options to choose from. We're not going to go over all of these in this lesson, but I just want you to be aware that you do have additional ways to customize your brushes based on all of these different tool options, and there's a ton of them. So you have a lot of control and flexibility to create custom brushes to help you fulfill your creative vision. You can also access your brush presets from this panel as well. The other thing you can do with your brushes is apply a specific type of blending mode. You can increase or decrease the opacity. Then we have this button here and this one, and those work best with drawing tablets as well as this one, which is an airbrush type effect. We also have flow, and this is going to adjust how often the paint is being applied to your document. I'm going to go ahead and turn that one off and create a new document. And if we adjust our opacity to, let's say, 50%, and I paint, then it's adding 50% of black, which is this gray color. And then if I paint over it again, it's going to add additional opacity the next time I go through it. Let's go ahead and turn that one off, create a new one again, and let's compare that to flow. So let's set flow to 50% as well. And when I click and drag, you can see it's not just adding 50%. Every time I go over a certain area, it's adding another 50% in that area. It's probably going to be easier to see at a lower level, so let's bring it down to 5%. And I'm also going to change my brush to a soft round brush. And now when I click and drag, we can see only 10% is being added, but every time I go over in new areas, it's adding it more and more and more. So unlike opacity, where I have to click every time I want to add a new amount, with flow, it's going to continuously flow out of my brush until I stop applying it. So think of it like a spray can. If you hold down the button on a spray can, it's going to continue shooting out paint until you let go of that button. And it's going to keep adding more and more layers of paint on top of the areas you're going over. If you're going over the same area over and over again, it's going to continue adding more and more paint in that area. It's the same concept for flow. And then with smoothing, this is going to smooth out the edges of your stroke. And then we have additional options for smoothing out that stroke from here as well. So those are the basics of brushes. In the next lesson, we're going to take a look at some additional brush options.